Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 801. Sunday night's episode of Game of Thrones was an interesting one, perhaps more because of what it wasn't than because of what it was. It wasn't the big showdown between Jon Snow and Ramsay Bolton the Bastardful as it's called by fans. Nor was it the big showdown between Sandor the Hound Clegane and his brother, Gregor the Mountain Clegane Clegane so many bowls, and none of them yet. Nor was it a moment of redemption for Jaime Lannister, whose moment of redemption is long coming, yet never arrives. Perhaps that arc has simply been erased. Perhaps Jaime is simply meant to love Cersei, and kill every Tully who stands in his way to reach her, miserable and cold as she may be. We didn't even learn the details of the secret mission Varys embarked upon before the slave master showed up on Myreen's doorstep. And when Daenerys returned to the failed city, she didn't speak a word. So many moments led to nothing tonight. Let's begin with the bloodiest. Let's begin with the Hound. Quite possibly the best scenes in No One Involved Sandor Clegane. We first see him as a shadowy blur approaching a group of bandits. The four men are having a jolly old time when the Hound arrives. The first unfortunate rogue loses his head to Sandor's hand axe. The rest go down nearly as fast. The Hound tries to glean information off the last one, but the bandit simply swears at him. "Those are your last words?" Sandor asks. I paraphrase to take out the bad language. What can I say? This is a family-friendly Game of Thrones review. When the bandit responds with just another curse, Sandor tells him he doesn't even know how to die properly. Oh hell. He says, "You're shit at dying, you know that." His quest for vengeance doesn't end there, and much to my surprise and delight the Hound eventually comes upon the Brotherhood without banners, a group of freedom fighters we haven't seen since Sandor killed Britain Darien in Trial by Combat, and the Red Priest, Horus of Myr, resurrected him. See my video post on why this is so important to Jon Snow's resurrection for context. This time around, the Brotherhood and Sandor are on the same side. They bicker over who gets to kill who, but in the end they sit down for a meal and some chit-chat about the future. But not before they hang the villains who killed Sandor's friends. Sandor takes the yellow-clothed man's boots. Apparently Brick and Horus intend to head north, where cold winds are blowing. Perhaps Horus had a vision that showed him the White Walkers. Whatever their intel, they seek to recruit good men to their cause, which now includes the Hound. He muses over the offer, but doesn't give a definitive answer. I want to make bets. I don't think he heads north with the Brotherhood. I think he heads south to find his brother. Clegane may not happen the way we thought, read on to see why, but it still has to happen. Unless, of course, he runs into Brian on the road, and they throw down. Then again, it's possible the two brothers never face one another, and the Hound goes north to help fight off the real enemy. Speaking of big, fearsome warriors, let's take a moment to walk in the big, oversized boots of Brienne of Tarth. Brienne arrives at the siege of Riverrun much like we all expected her to. She confronts Jaime and tells him of her plan to convince the Blackfish to go with her north, to help Sansa take Winterfell. Much like I predicted, the Blackfish doesn't bite. He cares less for Sansa and her home than he does for his own home. This turns out to be a mistake. When Jaime sends Edmure to the castle to order the men to lay down their arms, he quickly obliges. Edmure was never particularly smart or brave. He would rather save his child, whom he has never met, and turn over his uncle and ancestral home, than resist the Kingslayer and the Lannisters and Frey's. The coward. I am, at this moment, reminded of Edmure's failure in archery. Was this, in some way, his petty revenge against his uncle for unmanning him in long ago? Here's that scene. In any case, the Blackfish goes down fighting and Brian and Odric escape. Jaime waves as he sees them rowing away down the river. He's given Brian his sword. There's still some honor and some goodness in him, obviously, but I'm not sure when, if ever, Game of Thrones will allow it to really, truly emerge. At this point, Jaime is still obsessed over his sister. I'm not a fan of any of this. I don't like how quickly they killed off the Blackfish. I mean, here is a man who evaded capture at the Red Wedding, who rallied men to him and retook Riverrun. Then these men, for reasons the show does not explain, turn on him and accept Edmure as their rightful lord, despite knowing that he's under the Lannisters' thumb. It's honestly preposterous. It's bad. It's one of the worst bits of writing and plotting this show has ever foisted on viewers. I don't buy that blind allegiance to Edmure. These are men who retook their castle under the Blackfish. He absolutely would have commanded more loyalty out of these men than the Longhebs and Edmure. It's all far too neat and tidy. It deserves to be called out for what it is. Expediency at the expense of quality. For shame. The Blackfish's death is on the showrunner's hands even more than Jaime Lannister's. In any case, we'll leave one Lannister for another and go pay a visit to Cersei, the Queen Mother, has a brief moment of victory, followed by a crushing defeat and a mystery tonight. The victory came when her cousin, Lancel, came to take her to the High Sparrow. She refuses to go with him, and so he tells her to stand down or there will be violence. "I choose violence," she says. Sarah Gregor, the zombie mountain Clegane, takes the first Faith militant that attacks him and rips his head off with his bare hands. It's actually a very satisfying moment. The mountain is a villain. Cersei is a villain. Qyburn, the Eggsmeister, is a villain. They're bad people. And yet, at the same time, it's quite lovely to see the sparrows taken down a notch, to see them quake in fear. Their arrogance is palpable at this point. Their leader is very good at the Game of Thrones, and they ride his coattails with a cocky self-righteousness that just begs to be deflated. It doesn't work out well for Cersei in the long term, however. Later she finds herself in the throne room where her son, the malleable Tommen, does more damage to her than Joffrey ever managed. Under the direction of his new master, the High Sparrow, he abolishes trial by combat. So much for Cersei's one last chance. So much for Loras Tyrell's chances also. So much for Clegane. Maybe. Crestfallen, Cersei on Qyburn talk in whispers. "Your Grace," says Qyburn. "That old rumor that you told me about. My little bird investigated, and?" asks Cersei. "Is it just a rumor or something more?" "More," says the Maester. "Much more. This is, I suspect, all about the wildfire. Is Cersei getting ready to burn King's Landing to the ground? Or perhaps just the High Sparrow? We shall see. For now, let's pay a visit to another strong female character, Arya. I'm a little disappointed that some of the fan theories didn't come true tonight. I mean, I'm glad that Arya didn't join the Faceless Men, and proclaimed herself as Arya Stark and not No Girl as I predicted, but I'm not as happy about how last week and this week resolved things. My favorite fan theory was the Fight Club one, in which the Waif and Arya were one and the same person, two warring sides. In this theory, the Waif was nothing more than a part of Arya's mind that wanted to erase her, to fully become not a girl. If this had played out the way the theory suspected it would, Arya would be killed by the Waif, who would then return to Jaqen and tell him that Arya was dead. Then we would see her remove her face and Arya would be underneath, fully transformed into an assassin of the many-faced god. Instead, it turns out that last week's carefree Arya was just acting totally out of character, and that multiple deep stab wounds to her stomach were nothing more than the flesh-wound mere scratches. Several stabs to the gut would remove a hardened warrior from battle for a good long time, but Arya manages to be up and running almost instantly, thanks to some tender love and care at the hands of Lady Crane. Of course, Lady Crane is killed in the process, horrifically by the Waif. It's kind of a waste of that entire storyline, to be honest. Then Arya is chased through the streets of Brothers by the Waif, only to get to where she hid Needle. She faces her adversary, slices the candle in half, dousing the flame, and then, we don't even get to see the fight. She just wins, apparently, though since we don't see the fight and these assassins disguise themselves as others, it's possible the Waif won and killed Arya, and we don't get to enjoy the moment. I'm sort of baffled by how much of a letdown Arya's story turned out to be, even if I'm glad she's heading back to Westeros at last. What was the point of her being in Brothers to begin with, though? I don't see it. We won't tarry here long either. Instead, let's move on to the most entertaining dwarf in the world, Tyrion. I really enjoyed Tyrion's drinking scene with Missandei and Grey Worm. He got them to drink. He got them to tell jokes. These are, quite possibly, Tyrion's greatest victories of the season. After all, even though he's gotten a bunch of Lord of Light fanatics to come talk up Dany, his truce with the slave masters has resulted in nothing but a massive naval invasion. The slave masters of the various neighboring Slabber cities arrive in full force and attack Meereen. Just at that moment, Dany and Drogon also arrive and say nothing. Truly, this was the weirdest moment of the episode. Dany arrives as the enemy attacks and nothing happens. She doesn't even speak. Okay then, we won't bother with Meereen. Bad guys are attacking. Dany and her retinue probably shouldn't still be in Meereen to begin with. I have a hard time caring. Let's wrap things up. I'm Eduardo Palomera, thanking you for watching this review. Like this video if you like it, thanks.